Brothers, have you ever asked God for a sign so you can understand His will better? So you can understand what you need to do in your life and which route to take? I have. And quite honestly, very often I was left disappointed and discouraged. I'm sure most of us have heard numerous of stories where God miraculously showed up. I know a guy who was dating a girl, and he asked for a helicopter to fly by in a no-fly zone. And a helicopter shows up and flies by. And when you hear those stories, you're thinking, man, that's so awesome. And it is. It is awesome. And after hearing those stories, subconsciously we wish that would happen all the time with us. When a trial shows up, right after it, God shows up with a miracle. When we face the unknown, God shows up. And He clearly sends some kind of message. A bird lands on your car or something. The problem, brothers, that in that kind of life, our faith doesn't grow. Whether we understand it or not, most of us after an easy life. And then with an easy life, faith doesn't grow. Consider Paul. Paul goes around healing people. In fact, there were times when they would take clothing from Paul or something that Paul touched, like a handkerchief, and they would place it on the sick and they would be healed. Can you imagine the power Paul had? He's not around. He's not there to lay his hands on the sick. He's not there to pray for them. Somebody just takes his clothing and puts something on the sick and they're healed. You're thinking, man, with power like that, with authority like that, Paul should have a pretty easy life. If he can command the sick to be healed, he can really makes his life pretty easy and comfortable. But when you read his biography, it seems like the opposite. It's a really difficult life. It's a really challenging life. Even he says that the Lord placed a thorn in his flesh. So he was under constant challenges. He was beaten. He was near death. He was shipwrecked. And the list goes on. Think about Timothy. I think he's probably his favorite or best disciple, his most faithful disciple. He writes Timothy that he should take some wine for his stomach and his other frequent ailments. So Timothy was sick very often. He's not healed by Paul. Brothers, what if we live in a time where the Lord is not after our comfort, but our faith? What if the Lord wants us to go through the darkest times and just trust Him without any signs or miracles? When I asked for signs, and in some cases there was just two ways you could go, and I would say, Lord, if you want me to go right, so to speak, would you send this sign? And I would give it a little time and no sign. And then I would pray, Lord, okay, if you want me to go left, well, send me this sign, no sign. And I started noticing that doubt is creeping in my heart. Like, what's wrong? What's going on? Is something wrong with me? Am I doing something wrong? Am I even a believer? Like, why is God not answering me? And after time, brothers, I realized that God is after my faith. He wants me to trust Him. He wants me to trust Him in the darkest times, in the hardest times. Brothers, so if you're facing some hard times or challenging times, or you're facing the unknown, if it's dark and you feel like you hit the rock bottom, keep trusting. Keep trusting Him. That's what He's after. He wants to strengthen your faith. He will show up. Trust Him. Stay strong, warriors.